Welcome to the Lifestyle First podcast, discussing lifestyle medicine and making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1 question, 2 research reviews, and 3 actionable health tips, all centered around the Lifestyle First method, your blueprint for the 10 key routes of optimal health and happiness. And now your host, lifestyle medicine physician and coach, Dr. Alka Patel.
Hi, hey, and hello, and welcome to Season 8, Episode 11. Yes, this is the final episode for this season and the final episode for this year as well. And it has been such an enriching series, hasn't it? So what I wanted to do today was to just take us back to review the highlights of the conversations and the actions of this season. Now, you will all know by now that my focus is on action taking, translating all that wonderful knowledge that we have into action. So today, let's recap on the actions for this season. And as you're listening, think about what actions you've already taken to enhance your health and your happiness this year. And then take one more. Be an action taker. What one new action will you take today? So in episode 1, I talked to Professor Gordon Matthews about Ikigai, the Japanese concept of our sense of individual purpose. Ikigai as a practice, as an emotion, and as a pursuit. And this has been translated in the West as that sweet spot intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you get paid for. Dr. Matthews shares his thoughts on this.
Many people may be familiar with that Ikigai diagram that's come over to the West, which talks about the intersection of what you love and what you're good at, what the world needs and what you can get paid for. And if you find that sweet spot, that is your Ikigai. What is your view on that?
Well, that may be true. But first of all, that's something Japanese would not recognize unless they've read a Japanese translation of this. That has little to do with the Japanese concept of Ikigai. Now, no one owns Ikigai. I don't own it. So the guy who wrote that can write anything he wants. Fine. But that's not something that would be recognizable to most Japanese as Ikigai. It's also true that we need to be a little skeptical about the world of neoliberalism that we're in. Because what that means when we come down to our individual selves is we're always working on our CVs, our resumes to look better. And how can I look better? What can I do to look better? And many gurus will tell us, find what you love and you can make a good living at it. You can be fine. Maybe not. And it's certainly true that some people make an effort to find what they love and are failures at it. And that's perfectly okay. But nonetheless, that kind of thing can happen. So life is not quite that easy. My own mother left my father many, many years ago to become an artist. And she realized, to her regret, after 15 or 20 years really striving to be an artist, that she simply was not very good at it. And that's an insight worth having, that just because you love to do something doesn't mean that all the gates in the universe are going to open. I go back to what the Buddhists say and what some recent, more serious psychologists have said. Life is painful. It is suffering. That's the way things go. And hopefully we can transcend it, but it's not all that easy. So I would say, in response to those books on Ikigai, yeah, go ahead and read them if you want. Fine, they might be helpful. But remember, too, that Ikigai isn't going to solve anything in the end, because you will die. And what will your life be worth then? I was just teaching my students about this the other day, that, if your Ikigai is your work, at some point you're going to have to retire. What do you do then? If your Ikigai is your family, your kids are going to leave home, your spouse will die or you will die. That's going to happen. We lose what we love, and we have to remember. Now, what's the solution to this? Well, again, my solution, I hope, is going to be to feel the rainbow, watch the rainbow. I won't feel the rainbow, feel the rain on me. Just experience the world. I'm hoping when I'm 95 years old, if I live that long, even if I am single and not able to move around much, to be watching BBC Earth and thinking, wow, what a planet we live on. That would be a great thing to do because we are more than anything now in our lives. Now, a book like that on Ikigai may be quite wonderful for somebody who is 20 years old trying to figure out what to do in their lives. And it might have been really helpful to me too. Nonetheless, life is more than that because of this overall message that we don't really matter a whole lot in the end. And the solution to that is to learn to enjoy life and laugh at ourselves. We really need to be laughing at ourselves. We take ourselves much too seriously. And if we learn to laugh at ourselves, it would be a lot easier to live life in a fuller way, I think.
No, I love that. Lighten up, absolutely. Lighten up on ourselves and lighten up on other people around us as well. And absolutely what you say, just that awe of the world and curiosity and experience seems to be what you're describing.
3 actions that Dr. Matthews gives us are to, number 1, laugh at yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously. Number 2, to enjoy the outside world and the people that you love. And number 3, to enjoy the gift of life that we all have. Episode 2, I talked to Zara Dry about disconnecting identity from stereotypes. And we start by defining stereotype. Now, whilst recognizing our need for a unique individual identity for ourselves is important, we also need a shared social identity to feel a sense of connectivity and inclusivity and belonging.
I've heard it said that stereotypes are a bit like air, invisible, but always present. So how would you define the word stereotype?
I would define stereotype as ideas and preconceptions we might have of others, but also of ourselves based on just culture, media, things that we see online.
And 3 actions that Zara gives us to help disconnect identity from stereotypes are, number 1, create your own social media page to educate others on identity and stereotypes. Number 2, know when to step away from negative news. And number 3, to research different forms of cultural art. Episode 3, it's a conversation about emotional eating with Meeta Darji and the reasons why we eat, which are beyond hunger.
Words are kind of quite powerful, emotional eating or stress eating, because you're right, we eat for fun, which is a kind of really positive emotion as well. We eat in connection with family. There's lots of kind of positivity around food as well. But actually, there's also things like fear, isn't there, that our food choices, or we eat when we're frustrated. Do you have a sort of a host of scenarios where people have said to you previously that actually food is not about just hunger? What else is there? What are those emotions that you commonly come across?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a clinical psychologist in the US who's written a great book. And I think her website is toomuchonherplate.com. Her name is Melissa McCreary. And she talks about the hidden hungers of eating. So actually, things that we crave that aren't really food, but we reach for food instead. So that's things like wanting to feel calm, wanting to feel in control, or when we're feeling scared, or when we want to feel energized, or when we're trying to avoid something. And these are all reasons why we might reach for the food. And the food is such a powerful force that we kind of use that in our toolkit to kind of as a coping mechanism, when really it's not probably the most sustainable habit, so to speak, because obviously it has its connotations as well.
3 actions that Meeta gives us to help with emotional eating are, number 1, prioritize sleep to create a better emotional state so that you can make wiser food choices. Number 2, to have food swaps accessible to you. And number 3, to take a pause before eating and to be aware so that you allow your conscious mind to support your food choices. Episode 4, I am talking to Keane about creating the right mindset for fitness. We talk about the power of words and avoiding self-limiting talk.
Now, I think the word fitness is something that we associate with the body, right? But I always say that fitness starts with the mind. And perhaps actually more than that, I tend to say fitness starts with your words. So your sort of internal and your external dialogue. And what I find, Brian, is that on a pretty much a daily basis, my patients and my clients, they're telling me, I need to lose weight. I need to do more exercise. I need to get fitter. And I always tend to zone in on that difference between I need to and I want to, because I find it just creates a different energy. So let me ask you, Brian, what are your thoughts then about the words that we use when it comes to fitness?
That's a great question, Alka. And I think it kind of gives me a perfect introductory point to what I think is so important when it comes to fitness. And as you said, that's the mindset element, like something that I'll say regularly on my podcast and on my Instagram and social media channels when I'm working with people on weight loss journeys or fat loss journeys, that when you get the mindset right, the body will follow. And I think that approach allows you to kind of layer up a proper foundation in terms of setting yourself up for success when it comes to losing weight, losing body fat, toning up, getting fitter, getting stronger, whatever your goal is when it comes to physical fitness. But if you don't get your mindset right on the front end, it's very difficult. A lot of people can get in shape, but they generally aren't able to hold it as a result of not doing the mindset. Like anybody, for the most part, can eat a diet or restrict their caloric intake for 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, maybe 12 weeks if you're super, super disciplined. But then they'll go back eating the normal way, and then weight normally rebounds back up or body fat climbs back up. And, that's what I call the diet mindset. I'm going to do this thing and eat this way for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, however long, I have to hit my target. And then I'm going to go back eating, quote unquote, the way that I eat, the way that I normally eat. And I think when you look at nutrition and you look at fitness and you look at the mindset and put them all together and you get it right from the front end and you know why you're doing it, you use very powerful phrases there that I want to get fit versus, I need to get fit, or I want to lose weight versus I need to lose weight. Like the power of your words will determine the way you approach something. Now it works on both sides. Like if I'm working with a client and they say to me, I need to lose weight, and I dig in a little bit deeper, I normally ask why 3 times, sometimes more than that. But if you ask why multiple times, you'll see that, well, there's actually a reason that they feel they need to lose weight, whether that's body confidence, whether that's, health reasons, whether that's they want to feel, sexier with their partner or whatever it is. It's loads of different reasons that people want to lose weight and want to look a certain way. But it's very important that you get your language right on the front end. You don't use self-limiting talk, like the other side of it. And you'll have seen this, Alka, that, I can't lose weight. Like that's one that I see all the time with people where their own internal dialogue isn't supportive of what they're trying to do because they think, my parents are overweight, so I'm overweight, or, I'm addicted to food and I can't stop overeating, not realizing that a lot of processed ingredients have additives in there to make you addicted to those foods. That's why you struggle to stop eating them. And that's a little bit of nutritional education, but that language that you use and that internal self-talk of I can't do something completely shuts your brain off to it then, and then you kind of get stuck in that nearly victim mentality of I can't do something. And I think it's really important that firstly you speak to yourself in a very compassionate way that, I might not have the education to lose weight just yet. I don't fully understand food or calories, or, I don't have belief systems around food that are potentially helping me right now. In the case of an example is, separating food into good and bad categories. I regularly tell my clients that, a piece of broccoli is not going to save you from a burning building and a chocolate bar is not going to stab you down a back alley. I'm like, they're not good or bad. Some are nutrient dense, some are more caloric dense. And that's just a little bit of education around food. But none of that matters if you don't get the mindset right on the front end and you don't get your language right and your self-talk right on the front end, because after that, then it's just tools and tactics that you're using with nutrition and fitness to help you hit your end goal.
And here are Brian's 3 top actions to create the right mindset for fitness. Number 1, get clear on the end goal. Know what you're going for. Number 2, focus on progress and keep tracking. And number 3, switch your mindset from intensity to consistency. Episode 5, I had a conversation with Dr. Lindsey Browning about sleep patterns and shift work. Now, with 11% of the UK population and 16% of the US population working shifts, this is an important and often overlooked area for consideration. And Dr. Browning tells us about our natural rhythms and the important role that light plays.
So what about then shifting perhaps to the individual? There you are, you've done your night shift, you're on your way home. How can you, back to that initial question, how can you start to resync your sleeping patterns with your shift work? What are some of the things that we can do?
Sure, we have a thing called our circadian rhythm, which helps us to be awake during the day and produce melatonin and be sleepy at night. And naturally, if we are in the UK, then our circadian rhythm is in a particular time zone. And you might have realized if you've gone abroad, you go to America, you go to Asia, your circadian rhythm is in the different time zone from the country that you visited. And then you'll feel sleepy when everyone else is getting up for the morning. When you're working shifts, it's almost like you've taken yourself to another country, to Australia, and you're in a completely different time zone. Now, what regulates our circadian rhythm, how we can tweak it, is primarily through light. And our body is designed that when we see light, our brains, we have a separate neural pathway. The eyes can see vision, so you can see me now, but also have a separate neural pathway whose sole job is to measure light levels throughout the day. And when we see the most light or the most lux of the day, our body says, it's the middle of the day, we should be really awake right now, and we should not produce any melatonin, and we should do that later. That's how it's supposed to work, and that's great. But when you're working shifts, your body is not in the same time zone as the natural daylight. So when you're driving home after a night shift, it's likely that the sun is coming up or the sun is up already, and you're seeing a lot of bright light. Maybe you're walking to the bus stop or you're driving home, you're flooding your eyes with loads of bright light, which is telling your brain, hey, look, it's really light. It's the middle of the day. Look how early it is. We need to wake up. And your body is going to actively stop producing melatonin, which is going to make sleep harder. So it's really important to just wear shades. It's the easiest thing in the world. Wear sunglasses on the way home. If you are if you're a pilot or you're airplane crew, then put the blinds down on the bus to the hotel. Just keep yourself as dark as possible before you get home to go to bed, because that's going to help your brain know that it's nighttime, your nighttime, and invest in some really good curtains, maybe an eye mask and some earplugs, just to keep all those distraction, vision and noise away, which is easy when you're going to bed at a normal time, 10, 11 o'clock at night. But when the kids are going to school, there's a sort of noise, it can be really hard to sleep. And also I would suggest having something to eat just before you go to sleep so that you don't wake up hungry after a few hours. So have a little bit of food, a little bit of drink of water, keep your room really dark and go to sleep. And another thing that's quite important about shift work is that we don't have to sleep in one block. I mean, the whole adults should get statistically between 7 and 9 hours sleep in a 24-hour period. That doesn't have to be in one block. And it's really important for shift workers, because maybe you get home and you have a 4-hour sleep, and then you get up maybe to go and do the shopping or see to the kids or do something like that. And then you could have another block of sleep before your next shift. So as long as you're getting ideally 7 to 9 hours sleep in a 24-hour period, it doesn't have to be in one block. So that's a really useful tip.
3 actions that Dr. Browning gives us are to help adjust our sleep patterns with our shift work, so that we need to be, number 1, aware of lighting, get lots of light exposure during your shift and decrease this at the end of your shift. Number 2 is to take a prophylactic nap just before you go to work so that you can top up your sleep. And number 3 is to talk to your family about the realistic demands of shift work. Episode 6. This was a wonderful conversation with previous monk Pandit Dasa about being more mindful at work, with calmness and stillness and serenity in our inner self, despite the busyness and uncertainty and change in our outer world. He shares a wonderful analogy about our mind as a smart device with apps.
One of your books, you talk about our mind being able to store more apps than any other smart device, and us having all of this information turned on at every moment, even when we don't need it. So how do we control that in our working day when that external environment is so busy and constantly sending us signals?
Yeah, then I'm going to kind of build off of what you said, that how I talk about how our mind works a lot like one of these, right? And when you have too many, just think about it for a moment. When you have too many apps open on one of these, it slows down. It drains the battery. Now, how many apps do you think are open in your mind right now? If you really stop to think, it's almost no end. It's almost like looking at the sky in a clear night. You see some stars, keep looking, you see more. You keep staring at the sky, and then eventually you can see it's blanketed with stars. So the mind also, you're like, oh, I'm just thinking about my weekend. Okay, then if you go a little deeper, oh, I'm thinking about my weekend and my laundry and my kids and my dog. And okay, a little deeper, oh my God, I got to pay the bills. I got to do this. I got to do a little deeper, and there's more and more and more. So we have to understand that this is what's happening up here. And we can control the mind like we control a smart device. We have to just learn how to close out the apps. Not all of them, the ones we don't need. Because there are a lot of apps up here that we don't need. Like even on our phones, I probably have half a dozen apps that I don't need. But I opened them and I forgot to close them out. And that's the same thing that happens up here. But it all starts with us recognizing that I have apps that are open. And that means we have to first stop for a moment and take a couple of minutes and think, okay, what's going on up there? What can I close out that's just draining my battery and is not needed? Because we're constantly worrying about what the future holds, which is normal to do. But if you think about it, so useless, because we have almost zero control over what's going to happen tomorrow or the day after. And our mind is expert at coming up with worst case scenarios about what's going to happen. Our mind is so good at that. It has a PhD in worst case scenario PhD, right? We all as human beings have that. Yeah. And if it's not doing that, it's remembering negative things from the past and constantly replaying. It's like a horror movie that traumatized you and you're just trying to play it all over again, just for no reason. So it's like, that's like our Netflix account. We have control over that thing. We can choose which movie we want to play and which movie we don't want to play. But right now, we've given our remote control to our Netflix account to someone else and saying, hey, you control it. Like, that's a bad idea.
And Pandit Dasa's 3 actions for us to be more mindful at work are, number 1, when you wake up, instead of reaching for your phone, take 10 deep breaths and think of one thing that you're grateful for. Number 2 is to appreciate a colleague and their contributions at work. And number 3, at dinner time with the family, each one of you to share one thing that you're grateful for before you start your meal. Episode 7 was with the intimacy doctor, Dr. Alexandra Stockwell, talking about what makes marriage work. We talk about the conscious partnership of marriage and the daily practical transactions that occur in a marriage.
But are these conversations then that we're actually having in our marriages, in our relationships? Are we talking about the person we are, the person we want to be, our own personal transformation? You talk about this in your book, which I have to say is a must read for all couples at every stage of their marriage. And you talk about this idea of a conscious partnership, don't you, where you're transforming together, but individually as well. I often sort of liken this to railway tracks. I've talked about this recently with a few people, and here we are, we're all on our own sort of railway tracks, taking our own journeys of personal transformation you just described, but every now and again we cross over and we come together. And
what a beautiful image.
And it's that idea that we can be in a marriage and be separate, but come together and still have everything that you've described. Is that realistic? Can you tell us more about this conscious partnership?
It is realistic with an adjustment in understanding of what it means, because yes, it is unrealistic to have conversation focused on personal development and growth and evolution and spiritual insights all of the time. That is not a reality. I don't need to explain that any further. And when people have meaningful careers that take time and attention and family and a household and children of various ages, it's just completely unrealistic. In fact, there is this statistic in North America, I don't know that it pertains worldwide, it may not, I just don't know, which is that the average couple spends less than 4 minutes a day discussing anything other than logistics and children, and I would throw pets in there. So your question is very, very relevant, but I want to explain that I'm not just talking about esoteric communications about the truth of who we are. That sounds rather lofty. I'm also talking about how you say hello when your partner comes in the door at the end of the workday. What needs and desires, what truth of who you are is being camouflaged in that moment without being thought of in that way. You and I are having a conversation that inherently is conceptual, and so we're describing it this way, but I'm talking about that brief moment where your partner comes in and maybe you're in the middle of something and you don't want to be interrupted. Or maybe you've been waiting and he walks in the door and you want a little attention. You want a moment of feeling special. Or maybe he comes in the door and there's one child is crying and the other one needs a diaper change, and you just need him not to take a breath, not to go take a shower, but to just start being helpful. These are the places where who we are is also revealed. And that does take some time and attention for some of the ones I just said, maybe in the moment, but certainly the crying child and the diaper needing changing, that's not the time to sit down and have something to drink and carefully discuss it. No, you take action together, but the important thing is not to let a sense of unmet needs accumulate. But in sharing about this with your partner, it is not his or her job to meet your needs. It is your job to identify, how do you want to feel? Who do you want to be? How do you want to live? And share that and see what your partner is up for in terms of those transition moments at the end of the day. What I'm talking about in the creation of conscious partnership, yes, it pertains to lofty matters, but it pertains to the most mundane things, all the way down to the proverbial cap on the toothpaste.
And the 3 actions that Dr. Stockwell gives us to make marriage work are, number 1, pay attention to the transitions in your marriage. Make one of those parts of your day that you come together more satisfying and more nourishing. Number 2, cultivate curiosity. Ask your partner interesting, fun questions. And number 3, take some time to think about what you want in a marriage. In episode 8, I look at the habits of the mind with Dr. Benna Kalik. And Benna Kalik has identified 16 habits that can help us create a more thoughtful world.
We are working for a more thoughtful world. And when we say thoughtful, we mean 2 things. We mean full of thought, and also thoughtful meaning caring and sensitive. And so we're really trying to help people understand. Right now, we see, for example, in the United States right now, we see so many polarities, so much division, and it's sad. And yet what we can say is it's not that we don't have differences, but that if we learned how to listen to one another with understanding and empathy, one of the habits, we would be able to say, I don't need to agree with you to understand your perspective. I don't need to agree with you to have empathy for your understanding and where you are and how you feel about that. I can understand that. And somehow, if I can take that enough willingness to see that, and then if I can be thinking flexibly, meaning I'm willing to entertain other perspectives than my own, I can begin to understand where we might find some common ground. But as long as I am able to listen with understanding and empathy and open my mind to your thinking, the more likely I am to find that common ground. And it's interesting because nothing short of this pandemic has told us that we are global. And if we can only learn how to really live with one another from a global perspective, then we will have a world that is willing to face the kinds of problems we have to solve, and which there are many. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so strongly the habits of mind are so valuable and important in school, because we're really helping our students learn through the habits of mind to become problem solvers, not just to be able to say back what you learned because you memorized it, but to say back what you learned because you understand it well enough and you're willing to be a problem solver.
And 3 actions that Dr. Kalik asks us to take are to care about the way the world is working. Number 2, to pay attention. What can you do differently? And number 3, to set one of these 16 habits as a goal for yourself. In episode 9, I talked to Richard Wilmore about using the arts to enhance your emotional health. Music, singing, writing, dancing, drawing, painting, they have a direct impact on our emotional well-being.
Perhaps thinking about those who might be experiencing some emotional up and down at the moment, and maybe ways for them to tap into creative expression as a way of helping that.
I think a big one is try a little bit of everything. Don't assume that you're going to like paint or that singing is going to be your thing that you're comfortable with. And that's okay to not be comfortable with something. So try any way to create that you can and see what you love about. If that's cooking, cool, go do it. If that's gardening, if that's writing music, picking up a guitar and learning that, that's what I think that would be my number 1. And then the second one would be just make marks, get paper and get some colors and just start scribbling, literally scribbling. Because that releases so much. Yeah. I love doing that. My favorite thing is to take paint and just spread it all over paper and it all ends up like brown. But I love the way it feels going across a canvas. I love the shininess of the paint. There's so many different elements that it goes beyond just whatever's on the canvas. It's all the little pieces.
Yeah.
And the third one, I would say, sing louder the next time you're singing, just like a little bit, because there's something about that too, about being able to use your voice. Mm-hmm. And I end up doing that a lot in the car. Because it starts off quiet especially when other people are in the car. I'm sort of humming to myself. And then by the time we're at our destination, we're all in our own little band screaming at the top of our lungs and we're all in a great mood.
And in this episode, Rich gives us these 3 actions to take for more creative expression. Number 1, try a little bit of everything for creativity. Number 2, make marks, get papers and colours out and release. And number 3, sing louder. The next time you sing, just use your voice. And in episode 10, I talk about the mindset traits of successful people. Stickability, trustability, adaptability, responsibility, and thrivability. Be smart about embracing these traits on your way from goal setting to goal getting. And that is a wrap. It has been a year of change like no other for all of us around the globe. So as the end of 2021 approaches, simply slow down. Trust that innate seasonal rhythm in you to take a pause, find comfort and care in those around you, Express gratitude for what matters to you and feel that joy of living a happy, healthy life. And I will see you all in 2022.
Thanks for joining us on the Lifestyle First podcast, making self-care as easy as 1, 2, 3. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and we'd love it if you'd be kind enough to leave a review. To learn more or to arrange a consultation, please visit www.dralkapatel.com. See you next time.